Alright, hopefully you guys enjoyed that mock draft. Hopefully it was a little controversial. Or not too controversial for you guys. Okay, so our next segment is the breaking ranking segment. So this breaking ranking segment is the 5 most underrated players, right? Yeah, 5 most underrated NFL draft prospects for the 2020 draft. Okay, so let's get started with this segment, breaking ranking. Okay, so coming at number 5 for the most underrated draft prospects for the 2020 draft, NFL draft, coming in number 5 is Lamar Jackson, cornerback. Lamar Jackson, not quarterback, cornerback Lamar Jackson. Yeah, it's weird, right? This guy is he reminds me a little bit of I don't know if you guys know, the Eagles cornerback Jalen Mills. Reminds me a lot of him, and he could fold. He could if you he could mold. Sorry, he could mold into a really good cornerback one day. He's a really he's the definition of a cornerback, developmental quarterback. Sorry, he's the definition of a developmental quarterback. He's quick on the line, and he has really good hands for interceptions. I'm really impressed with him. He has a lot of work that he needs to do, but it's all coachable. Um, and yeah, it's all coachable, easy to fix. Mistakes that he makes, and me personally, I feel like he could go in like the 5th round, but he could be a starter one day if the team takes the time on him. He could one day be eligible for the draft. I mean, not for draft, sorry. Eligible to be a starter. Uh, yeah, I'm really impressed with him. Probably not many of you know who he is, but look at his film. Even look at his highlights. I mean, I don't always judge on highlights, but highlights something. I feel like his highlight. I looked at his highlight reel too, and it kind of like show pretty much what I'm seeing in his film. But there are some blatant mistakes that he's making, which is coachable. And I feel like it'll take him like at least 2 years to develop into a starting cornerback. I think he has all the tools he needs to be a starter. And yeah, I'm very impressed with this film. And I'm impressed with his style. Lamar Jackson, cornerback, very excited. And it's a really good draft prospect. Very underrated, really pushed underneath the shelf. Like, a lot of people just don't have any faith in him, it seems like. But I do. And I feel like he could be a potential. Actually, he could be a potential slot cornerback. Yeah, a really good slot cornerback. All right, number 5, Lamar Jackson, not the quarterback, the cornerback. All right, so coming in at number 4. Okay, number 4 is J.J. Taylor, running back. I'm not just saying that because he's 5'6", because apparently I have this thing where I like a lot of players are 5'6", because it reminds me of Darren Sproles, like running back wise. That is not the case. It does not remind me of Darren Sproles. He reminds me, if I'm being honest, he reminds me a little bit of a Frank Gore that could catch the ball and is smaller. So just picture running back like Frank Gore, but smaller. That's what you have in J.J. Taylor. I feel like he could break through tackles even at his small height. He could catch the ball. He needs a little bit of work on that. He does. But he could catch the ball. And he could like slip through underneath people. I mean, he does have the quickest. He's not as quick as. The reason why he's not like Darren Sproles or a player like Tariq Cohen or Boston Scott. The reason why he's not players like that at their height is because he isn't as fast. But just because he isn't as fast doesn't mean he isn't that good of a running back. I mean, he reminds me a lot of like a Frank Gore type of running back, but smaller. But he isn't as strong as Frank Gore. Frank Gore is like a beast, all right? But he can slip underneath those tackles. He can break tackles. It seems like he has a pretty good stiff arm. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I feel like he's one of the players that will not be a starter, unfortunately. Of all these guys, I can't see him really being a starting running back, like the number 1 running back on the team. Maybe like like a Boston Scott role, like a nice number 2 or maybe even number 3 for like a power back. But J.J. Taylor is very impressive. You should look at his film. Does have a couple of issues like seeing the holes that are given into him. He kind of like has this habit of running around a little bit, try to get extra yardage. But I mean, that's fixable too with coaching. And yeah, and he also needs a little bit. He has a little bit of a dropping. He drops the ball a lot, like when it's thrown to his direction, which is something he needs to work on a little bit. So it's like a 50-50 ball with him. Sometimes he'll do an incredible catch, and sometimes he'll do a really, really easy drop. So I feel like that could be fixable with him. And yeah, J.J. Taylor, I could see him having a good career. And dude, it's really impressive how he's a power back at his height. I mean, a really strong running back. Or LeGarrette Blount or Frank Gore type of running back. I'm not saying he's at their level. If anything, he's more at like Garrett Blount's level, maybe. I could kind of see that, but yeah, J.J. Taylor, really strong running back for his height, very impressive, and he is, in my opinion, pretty underrated. Okay, coming in number 3 is Tony Brown, wide receiver. You're probably saying basically all the wide receivers in this year's draft class can be a starter one day. That's true, but this guy, I feel like he should be up there with the big names. I mean, I feel like he could go in the 3rd round. There's a couple issues that he has. I think it's because of his speed. Maybe that's why he isn't as appreciated. Well, not appreciated, like as looked at. There you go. Isn't as like one of the top tier draft prospects. I think it's mainly because of his speed, but his footwork makes up for his speed. All right, I think his catch radius should be a little bit better. He has a little bit of a habit of dropping passes, but I feel like if you give him the time, he could be a lot like Victor Cruz. That's who me personally reminds me of. But I think he could be a starter. I mean, quite honestly, he could really be a starter. I could really see that happening. He looks like a 3rd round draft pick that could possibly blossom into a great wide receiver. So Tony Brown, keep an eye on him. I feel like the top 3 are the only players that I could see being a starter one day, like blatantly a starter. So Tony Brown is one of them, and his footwork is really, really good. Even though his speed isn't as great, his footwork makes up for it. Maybe he could move to a. Oh no, that one. No, he doesn't fit the mold of a tight end, but his speed is a little bit more of a tight end speed. But his footwork is really good. His catching, his receiving ability needs to be a little bit better. But I mean, I could really see him being a starter one day. Tony Brown, keep an eye on him. Good receiver. All right, coming in number 2. I'm surprised. I barely heard anything from this guy. I'm really disappointed because I was a big fan of him in college, and really, really keep an eye on him. I think he's the most slept quarterback prospect. I can see why people aren't as like big of a fan, not fan, but like putting him under the radar. But okay, sorry. So coming in number 2 is quarterback Tyler Huntley. Okay, this guy is pretty damn good. I mean, like the past 2 years, he hasn't been good at throwing the ball. I mean, like in his early career, and I think people mainly judge him on his early career. But I mean, I don't want to say I think he's better than Jalen Hurts. All right, he's not as fast as Jalen Hurts, but he's a lot better thrower than Jalen Hurts. His arm is better than Jalen Hurts. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Michael Vick. All right, that's a bit extreme, but man, this guy, I think he could. I'm not sure if he could be a starter because I don't know. I just have a weird feeling that he could be a starter, but he's going to throw a lot of picks, so he's definitely made to be a backup quarterback. I can tell you right now, Tyler Huntley could be a better quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky. Flat out say it. I don't care. Flat out better than Mitchell Trubisky. But man, this I know a lot of people don't believe in him as a pastor, but he's really improved like a lot in the last couple seasons. Um, he has good speed, not as elusive as Lamar Jackson, but people aren't really talking about him as much. But but I saw an article and I didn't realize this, but people aren't talking about the fact that he finished second in the country in completion percentage behind projected first overall pick Joe Burrow. So what that means is he's second in completion, right behind Joe Burrow. That's insane. I know that's because he didn't throw the ball as much, but if you look at his deep ball, man, it's gotten a lot better. And I feel like if you just coach him, this Tyler Huntley reminds me a little bit of Philip Walker. Philip Walker, I believe, was a starter. He's gonna be a starter, and if you coach him, he could be one of the best starters in the league. And Tyler Huntley, I think, fits that mold perfectly. Good arm, like good enough arm to be a starter. I think he might throw a lot of picks, but he has good speed to make up for it. And he has a good deep ball. I mean, he's working on it. And I just really see him being a starter one day. Even though I feel like people won't believe in him as much because he might throw a lot of interceptions. But maybe that could be coached over time. Who knows? But reminds me a little bit of Michael Vick, a little bit of a Tyrod Taylor, and a little bit of Philip Walker, all combined into this one day good quarterback. Oh yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't get invited to the combine, but that's just a mistake on the combine's fault. Um, but Tyler Huntley, I think, is the most slept on quarterback, and I think number one has been talked about more than Tyler Huntley. But Tyler Huntley, he's meant to be a starter or at least a really good backup. You know, a lot of things he could improve on, and I think he could be improved on coaching, and his leadership is pretty good. Um, and yeah, that's all I gotta say about Tyler Huntley. I'm gonna keep an eye on him. I was a really big fan of him when he was with Utah. Uh, and yeah, Tyler Huntley, really good quarterback. He's really slept under the radar, and keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on him. All right. Tyler Huntley, number 2. Okay, now coming in at number 1, I have heard people talk about this guy a lot. Specifically to be the future heir to a quarterback, and I kind of agree with. But coming in at number 1 is Brian Lewerke. So people were talking about him a lot in his 2017 run at Michigan State. And it makes sense. I mean, people were talking about him being in like first round. People were really excited, but then he decided not to go into the NFL draft until his senior year. His sophomore year was great, but after his sophomore year, he has never really been the same. I think he got injured in 2018 as well. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, I think he might have gotten injured in 2018. I didn't really pay attention to him. I kind of forgot about him, but until his 2019 season. Yeah, he did get injured in 2018. He wasn't really the same in 2018, which is unfortunate. Wasn't as accurate, wasn't as efficient as he was. And I feel like people already forgot about him already. But his senior season, the back half of his senior season was really good. In my personal opinion, he improved a lot. He does have a high interception percentage, but I feel like a lot of his mistakes right now is all in his head. And if he has a really good coach, all those mistakes could go away. I mean, not could go away forever, but I mean, all the mistakes that he's making, it's all in his head. I think the pressure's getting to him a little bit, but if he has a really good coach in the NFL, I could see him going places, like really going places. He has a really good arm, in my personal opinion. He has a good arm. He needs to work on his deep ball a little bit. No, actually, his deep ball is good. It's just his confidence is really low, which is a shame. But the people that I heard people were talking about him being the heir to Ben Roethlisberger, and I could kind of see that. I could really kind of see that. But the only problem with that is I don't think Mike Tomlin has the patience to deal with a guy like Brian Lewerke. So there's that. But I could also see him being the heir to hold on a second, to a couple other teams too. I mean, teams that are ready to move on. Maybe he could be with the Colts. I could see him being an heir to Philip Rivers. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, I feel like Frank Reich can take the time to develop him. I think it's a better option for him to go to the Colts than to the Steelers. But this guy, I'm sorry, he's the reason why he's number one is because he is made to be a starter. He's much better than Dwayne Haskins ever was, and all this stuff is in his head that I feel like he could be drafted in the third round. My personal opinion. Um, Brian Lewerke, don't forget about him. Very underrated. I know people forgot about him ever since his 2018 season. His 2017 season was really good, and I feel like he could get back up to form from his 2017 season. All right, that's all we got for breaking ranking. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. Hopefully it will come out on Wednesday. I hope it does. I'm pretty sure this is gonna be a really long episode. Hopefully you enjoyed my version of the mock draft. And I apologize for not filming on Monday. Just things weren't working out and stuff. But hopefully you enjoyed this mock draft. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode, and stay tuned for the live reaction. Hope to see you there.